I love that. It definitely also opens the field of investigation at a young age for them because you will need a lot of those skill sets as you progress in your education, and also the importance of dissecting information. And I believe perhaps that's one of the biggest challenges education has is we're unfortunate, fortunate and unfortunate. Fortunate we have technology, but we need to understand that technology is there to be a tool for us and not to do the work for us. And when we confuse these two things, we forget that our brain itself is an amazing uh, software that keeps editing, keeps learning. And if you don't put information into it and you put more information to Chat GPT, what are you feeding your brain? Are you really training it to stimulate, to further acquire knowledge, to acquire wisdom? And those are the things that kind of like scares me sometimes, Dr. Blanton. But I'm gonna let Autumn with her
And
question.
that should scare you. And that should scare a
Yes.
lot of people
Yeah.
because 80% of the volume of the brain is developed by three.
Mhm.
80%. It is the most, it is the time that we're most susceptible to outside influences, right? So
Definitely.
it can develop positively or it can develop negatively. What happens in the brain, to your point, is it works with connection, right? So the dendrites and the neurons, they have to form connections. And so we form thousands and thousands of connections a day. When we don't read to our child, when we don't speak, when there's a lot of stressors around them, when we don't pay attention to them, those connections are not formed. And if they're not formed, when you get ready to go to kindergarten, that's when we're going to see it. There's gaps.
Mm.
So when you give your child technology and before 3, you're not allowing the connections to form. And then what happens is the brain undergoes a pruning process that use it or lose it.
Hmm.
And so if it's not used, you lose it.
Love it.
And then when you get to kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, we don't have enough of a foundation to build on. And so you slowly but surely see the foundation folding because the foundation has not been placed,
Mhm.
it's not been formed. And so people need to understand that yes, you can give your child device at 1 and 2, but you're not allowing the brain to do its thing.
The tangible experience is so important at that age too,
Mhm.
because the exposure, Dr. Blanton is talking this beautifully, is the importance of exposure, living, touching. You know, little
Mhm.
kids at that age, they're little scientists. That's why they drop something, they want to touch,
Touch it.
they want to feel, they want to, when they fall, they acquire that experience like, okay, this hurts. Living, it's so important. It's how the brain starts to take information, start analyzing, right? Subconsciously, you take that information till the rest of your life, you know. And love how you put that beautifully together. Autumn, pretty sure you have a few questions there.
I do. So I think, unfortunately, the iPad has become a babysitter, right? And I, I think
I'm sorry, Autumn. That was a good one.
it has, and but I feel like there are boundary lines, right? Because I think there are certain families who look at the school as like the drop-off center where like they're gonna do all their education at school, and then when they come home, it's kind of like either rest, relaxation, or just like I had a long day at work, so let me like try to breathe and I'll give you the iPad.
Mhm.
And then we have families who do value education, and then we look at the mental health of certain children because then there's like the pressure of education. So my question is, how do we find a healthy relationship with education where we are worried, or like we're more invested in our child's development,
Mhm.
and but we're not, because I feel like there's two extremes.
Mhm.
How do we walk that line towards like a healthy balance?
Right. And so we do need a balance. Like
Yeah.
technology is here. Technology is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen. I say to families all the time when I see them with infants with the phone and with the iPad or whatever, and they're not even 3 yet. And I say, they're going to learn how to drive, just not at 5. They're going to learn technology, just not at 2, right? Let's let the brain develop so that the connections are made properly. And then when we decide to introduce technology to them, 3 and up, it still needs to be monitored. It still needs to be monitored. Why? So without getting technical, there is um, there is a process called serve and return. Right? So it's like a tennis match. A child will offer up the opportunity to engage with conversation with you, right? If you don't take it, if you don't, take it, they're not going to offer it again. And so it needs to be, I serve up opportunity to speak with you, you've got to serve it back. And it goes back and forth. That does not happen with technology, right? So remember when I told you about what happens in the brain with the connections, they're not being made with the iPad. And so if they're not being made, then we're not building a foundation for reading to occur. And that's where we find ourselves. The foundation is flawed. And we don't know it because we don't know the developmental continuum of reading. We don't know the components of reading. We don't know that seeing a McDonald's sign and you say, oh, that's McDonald's. That's a connection. That's a connection. And how does that mean? How is that going to connect to reading? It all connects. It all connects. So we have to find a balance. I say that when you at 3 and 4 in the preschool, that we sit with our children with the technology. 30 minutes, not straight. I'm talking 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Right? And that's it. Bring back everybody gets mail delivery, right? We get boxes from all kinds of online retailers. Save those boxes. Let children play with them. Go back to the old days. Give them some tape. Give them some boxes. Give them old sheets. Give them pots. Let them be creative that way while you are cooking, while you are relaxing. Let them have those open ended materials to do what they want. That is still building the brain for reading to occur. Because now you're going to ask, I'm wondering what you're doing. I'm wondering what you're using. I'm wondering how that will stand up. I'm wondering why that keeps falling. You're still building reading, those pre-reading skills. You are, and you're sitting and you're relaxed. You're cooking or you're doing whatever you need to do, but you're giving them the opportunity without the technology at this point to build critical, creative skills, imagination, all of those 21st century skills that we need. You're building as they are infants and toddlers all the way through. I don't think that it was so much of a change. We've always had a reading problem. There's always been a reading problem, right? COVID did not unveil this great big reading problem. COVID unveiled the access and accessibility, right? That woke us up. Well, we've always had a problem in this country with reading, going back to anti-literacy laws. So I just want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that our brains were not wired to read. We have to teach it to read, right? It does this great thing, right? It rewires itself, right, to form pathways for reading to develop. A lot of people don't understand that. It's very different than language. Language, you can put a child in a room full of people who are speaking and they will speak. You don't have to teach them how to talk, right? That is not going to happen for reading. You cannot sit someone in a room full of people who are reading, whether they're reading out loud or silently. It's not going to happen. You have to teach it to read, right? That starts very early. What we think is reading starts in kindergarten, and then we build these habits in kindergarten. And if we think that, we're 5 years already behind, right? Reading starts really at the moment of conception. How? all of the stuff that mom eats, all of the environmental pressures and stress impacts the developing brain. Reading is all about the brain. The brain is the main character, right? And so if we understand that, then we have a point of reference. And so how do we build stamina, right? Because in order to learn to read and read well, you have to build stamina. I'm like, this is a race, right? Not for the quick athlete, but it's endurance. And it took us years, decades to get here. My book has only been out since August. It's not going to take months for us to get out. And so people have to come to the point where I came to and say, okay, I reflected. Now I see, and now I'm going to do better. When you know better, you do better.